A blind veteran walked into the Canine Rehabilitation Center, hoping to find a gentle guide dog. Instead, he stopped in front of the kennel of the most dangerous retired police dog ever recorded. Aggressive, untrainable, impossible to rehome. But when the dog sensed him, something unbelievable happened. What happened next shocked everyone. Before we start, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And really, I'm curious. Where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The soft tapping of a white cane echoed through the quiet hallway long before anyone noticed the man holding it. Ethan Walker, former Army sergeant, decorated veteran, and blind for the last 3 years, moved with careful, practiced steps. His left hand gently brushed the wall, his right hand gripping the cane that guided him through the unknown. The scent of disinfectant, metal, and wet fur drifted through the air, telling him he'd reached the place. He'd spent weeks preparing himself to visit the Canine Rehabilitation and Adoption Center. His heart thudded faster than his boots. He had faced ambushes, night raids, and explosions, yet somehow walking into this building felt harder. Maybe because this time he wasn't fighting an enemy. He was fighting the emptiness that had followed him home from war. A woman's voice approached him, warm and steady. "Mr. Walker, you made it. Welcome." Ethan nodded, offering a faint smile. "Please, just call me Ethan." "That's perfectly fine," she replied. "I'm Karen. I'll be guiding you through the evaluation process. We have several calm, well-trained service dogs ready for pairing." Ethan's fingers tightened slightly around his cane. "I'm not looking for perfect," he murmured. "Just someone who understands." Karen hesitated, unsure what he meant, but led him forward. As they walked deeper into the facility, distant barks grew louder, bouncing off steel, doors, and concrete floors. Ethan listened carefully, identifying each sound: fear, agitation, excitement, loneliness. He knew animals expressed what humans tried to hide. A sharp, aggressive snarl suddenly ripped through the hallway, followed by explosive barking strong enough to vibrate the metal cages. Karen stopped instantly. "Let's keep moving. That's one of our more difficult dogs." Ethan tilted his head, listening intently. "What's wrong with him?" "He's not available for adoption," she said quickly. "A retired police K9 with behavioral issues. He's in isolation. Best we avoid that side." But Ethan felt a strange pull, like the heavy growl had reached straight into his chest. There was pain in that bark. Raw, wounded, familiar. He swallowed hard, pushing down the memories it brought back. "Don't worry," Karen added, sensing his discomfort. "You won't go near him. We'll show you gentler dogs, ones suited for guiding." Ethan nodded, though unease lingered. As Karen guided him past the rows of kennels, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for him behind that violent roar. Something broken. Something that somehow felt like looking into a mirror he could no longer see. Karen led Ethan down the long corridor, her footsteps echoing faintly against the polished floor. Behind each steel door came different sounds: soft whimpers, playful barks, nails clicking restlessly. But one kennel, the one Ethan had heard before, remained ominously silent now, as if the creature inside was listening. They passed 3 handlers in yellow shirts talking quietly near a supply room. Their conversation drifted through the air, and Ethan's heightened hearing caught every word. "Thor went crazy again this morning," one whispered. "Bent the kennel bars," another added. "That dog's a monster. Should have been retired to isolation, not kept near adoptable dogs. Yeah, but the director says it's cruel to put him down." Still, no one's going near him. Karen cleared her throat loudly to silence them. "Gentlemen, please keep the volume down." The handlers stiffened and nodded as Ethan approached, but the tension in their voices lingered in the air. He frowned. "Thor." Karen hesitated. "He's one of our retired K9s, a German Shepherd, highly trained, Highly dangerous now." Ethan's brows furrowed. "What happened to him?" She exhaled softly, as if debating how much to reveal. "Thor used to be a top-tier police dog. Elite tracking, explosive detection, apprehension, you name it. Their best. But after his handler died on duty, Thor changed." Her voice lowered. "He became unpredictable, aggressive, extremely territorial. He's attacked 2 staff members and nearly broke a handler's arm." Ethan listened, feeling a knot form in his chest. He knew grief. He knew how it twisted even the strongest beings into shadows of themselves. "We keep him here because he can't be safely relocated," Karen continued. "But he's not adoptable, not trainable. He barely tolerates the people who feed him." Ethan tilted his head slightly. "And yet?" "He's still here." Karen nodded. "Because before his breakdown, he saved dozens of lives. The director says that earns him the right to live out his days, no matter how difficult." Ethan let the silence linger a moment. "I heard him earlier. That bark, it didn't sound like anger." Karen paused. "Ethan, with respect, Thor has attacked every person who's come within 10 feet of him since his partner died. Whatever you think you heard, it wasn't calm." But Ethan's instincts whispered otherwise. There had been something layered beneath the growl: pain, confusion, longing. As they continued walking, Ethan felt the energy shift again, a faint vibration through the floor, like heavy paws pacing behind steel bars. Thor knew they were there, and he was waiting. The corridor narrowed as Karen guided Ethan deeper into the secured wing. The atmosphere shifted, colder, heavier, as if the walls themselves carried memories of violence. Ethan's cane tapped softly against the floor, echoing through the tense stillness. Then, without warning, the silence shattered. A thunderous snarl ripped through the air. Metal clanged violently as something huge slammed against the bars with bone-rattling force. Ethan froze, heart punching against his ribs. The sound was unmistakable. Rage, strength, grief, all crashing forward like a storm. Karen gasped and tightened her grip on Ethan's arm. "Thor, back!" she shouted, but the dog didn't back down. Snarling erupted again, louder this time, filled with raw fury. Ethan couldn't see the beast behind the bars, but he could feel him. Every muscle coiled, teeth bared, paws scraping the concrete in a frantic, furious rhythm. Handlers rushed forward. "Get away from the cage," one shouted. "Don't. Let him get close," another barked. Ethan's breath hitched. He wasn't afraid. He was drawn. The vibration of Thor's growl reverberated in his chest, stirring memories he thought he'd buried. Karen stepped in front of Ethan protectively. "Stay behind me. He's dangerous." But Thor's aggression faltered for the briefest moment. Between 2 savage barks, Ethan heard it, an abrupt, sharp inhale from the dog. A pause, a flicker of confusion, almost recognition. Ethan tilted his head slightly. He stopped. Karen shook her head. "No, he's just getting angrier. Come on, we need to pass quickly." But Ethan wasn't convinced. Thor barked again, but this time the sound held something different. Not just rage, but something wounded underneath. Something broken. Ethan whispered almost to himself, "That's not just aggression." Thor suddenly lunged forward again with a deep, guttural snarl, so violent the entire kennel shook. Handlers grabbed tranquilizer, poles just in case he broke through. Yet Ethan stepped closer. Karen grabbed his arm, panicked. "Ethan, stop. He will go through those bars if he has to." Ethan didn't move any closer, but he didn't retreat either. He simply listened. Really listened. Thor's breathing was rapid, desperate. His claws scratched the floor, not in attack, but in frustration, like he was trying to reach something just out of grasp. For a moment, Thor grew quiet. Only heavy breaths filled the air. Then, in a sudden shift that froze everyone, the fierce German shepherd let out a low, trembling whine. Karen blinked. The handlers stared. Thor had never made that sound for anyone. Ethan exhaled slowly. Whatever Thor saw, or sensed, behind Ethan's blindness, it had shaken him. Karen's hand tightened nervously around Ethan's arm as Thor's final bark echoed through the hallway. The handlers remained on high alert, tranquilizer poles raised, eyes locked on the agitated dog pacing behind the bars. Thor's breaths came fast and heavy, each exhale like a warning rumble. But no one missed the truth. They had all heard that strange, trembling whine, a sound Thor had not made in years. Karen cleared her throat, masking the tremor in her voice. "Let's move on, Ethan, quickly. The service dogs are in the next wing." But Ethan didn't step away. He stood rooted, listening to Thor's restless pacing, his claws scraping the concrete in uneven circles. Something about the dog's energy lingered in the space between them, raw, emotional, familiar. One of the handlers rushed forward. "Sir, please, you can't stay here. This isn't safe." Another added, "Thor is not for adoption. Even staff members avoid him unless absolutely necessary." Karen nodded firmly. "I'm sorry you had to experience that. He senses everything. Fear, stress, even military sense. He reacts badly to anything that reminds him of his past." Ethan's jaw tightened. That was more than a reaction. He recognized something. Karen hesitated. "Ethan." "Thor reacts to everyone, aggressively. It's unpredictable and it's dangerous. You can't read too much into what just happened." But Ethan stepped slightly closer. Not enough to reach the bars, but enough for Thor to sense his presence again. The dog's pacing stopped abruptly. The hallway fell into a stillness so complete it felt like the entire building was holding its breath. Thor didn't snarl. He didn't bark. He simply stood there, panting slowly, listening to Ethan. The handlers exchanged alarmed glances. "What is he doing?" one whispered. "No idea. He never stops like that," another muttered. Karen quickly pulled Ethan back. "Please, we shouldn't encourage this. Thor is unstable." She forced a smile into her voice. "Come on, Ethan. The dogs we want to show you are gentle, trained, and ready to bond. You'll meet them, see who feels right." Ethan interrupted softly. "But what if the one who feels right is him?" Karen froze. The handlers stiffened, stunned by the question. "Ethan," Karen said gently, "Thor isn't a choice. He's a danger." But Ethan shook his head slowly. "Not to me." Behind them, Thor let out a soft, rumbling sound. Not aggression, not warning. Something closer to longing. And that, more than anything, terrified the staff. The hallway seemed to shrink as Thor's quiet rumble filled the air. It wasn't a threat, far from it. It was something deeper, almost uncertain, like the dog was fighting between instinct and memory. Ethan stood still, his head tilted slightly as he listened to the breathing pattern behind the bars. "Why did he stop?" one handler whispered. "No clue." "Thor never freezes," another muttered. Karen tried to regain control of the moment. "It's just coincidence. He's probably exhausted from barking. Let's move on." But Thor wasn't exhausted. He was focused. Ethan took one careful step forward. The handlers tensed instantly, raising their poles. "Sir, don't," one warned. "He will attack." Ethan held up a calming hand. If he wanted to attack, he would have done it already. Thor's ears twitched at the sound of Ethan's voice. The aggressive panting softened, almost shifting into curiosity. Ethan couldn't see the dog, but he could feel the attention, sharp, intense, searching. He inhaled slowly. "There's something familiar in him." Karen exhaled impatiently. "Ethan, please, you're projecting. He reacts to everyone who walks by." "No," Ethan said quietly. "He doesn't." The handlers exchanged uneasy looks, confirming what everyone knew. Thor reacted to everyone with violence. Everyone except this blind stranger he'd never met. Thor took a step closer to the bars. The jingle of his collar echoed through the hall. Another step, then another. The handlers stiffened in fear, but Ethan didn't move. Thor's breathing grew slower, deeper. He tilted his head, sniffing the air as though trying to place a scent buried under scars and time. Then, without warning, a soft, uncertain sound escaped him, a low whine that didn't resemble the violent creature from minutes ago. Ethan's voice softened. "That's not aggression, that's recognition." Karen looked baffled. Recognition of what? Ethan touched his own chest. Pain. Loss. He senses what's inside me. Karen hesitated, her confidence wavering. Even if that's true, that doesn't make him safe. But Ethan shook his head. It makes him understood. Thor stepped even closer to the bars, pressing his muzzle against the cold metal. His body trembled, not with rage, but with something far more vulnerable. Something no one in that building had seen from him since the day he lost his partner. One handler whispered, awestruck, "It's like he's choosing him." Karen swallowed hard, uncertainty creeping into her voice. "Ethan, this connection, whatever it is, it's not normal." Ethan nodded gently. "No," he whispered, "it's not." And that was exactly why he couldn't walk away. Ethan stood silently, still absorbing the strange magnetic pull between him and the powerful dog behind the bars. Thor remained pressed close to the metal, breathing slow and heavy, as if grounding himself in Ethan's presence. The handlers weren't breathing at all. They were frozen, unsure whether to intervene or simply watch something that felt impossible. Ethan finally spoke. "I want to know what happened to him." Karen stiffened. "Ethan, his file isn't something we usually share." "I'm not asking for paperwork," Ethan said gently. "Just tell me, why is he like this?" The room grew quiet. Even Thor seemed to pause, ears tilting toward the voices. Karen exchanged a glance with the handlers, then sighed. "Fine. You deserve to know. But please understand, Thor's story isn't easy." Ethan waited, steady and calm. Karen began softly. "Thor was one of the best police dogs the city ever had. He worked with Officer Daniel Reeves for 4 years. They were inseparable. Thor wasn't just trained, he was loved." Thor let out a faint, rumbling breath at the mention of his handler's name. "1 year ago," Karen continued, "there was an explosion during a warehouse raid. Officer Reeves didn't make it out. Thor survived, but something changed in him. The moment they tried to pull him away from his partner's body, he snapped. He attacked every officer who approached, refusing to leave the scene." Ethan's hand tightened around his cane. "After that," Karen said, voice cracking slightly, "Thor became unpredictable, violent. He injured 2 handlers, nearly tore apart an evaluation room, and hasn't allowed anyone within arm's reach since." Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. "He lost his partner on the field." Karen nodded sadly. "And he blamed himself. Dogs don't understand trauma the way we do. They just feel the pain and protect what's left. For Thor, that pain became everything." Ethan swallowed hard. "His grief? It sounds familiar." Karen looked at him curiously. "Why familiar?" Ethan hesitated before speaking, the weight of memory heavy in his voice. "Because I was there when my unit was hit. I heard the explosion. I felt the heat. I woke up in darkness, and they told me I'd never see again." Karen's expression softened. The handlers bowed their heads slightly. Behind the bars, Thor let out another quiet whine, the sound vibrating with recognition, as if he understood every word. Ethan reached out one hand toward the bars, stopping inches away. "He's not broken," Ethan whispered. "He's grieving." Thor pressed his nose against the metal, trembling softly. And Karen knew in that moment, no gentle service dog would ever compare to this connection. Thor remained pressed against the metal bars, his breaths slow and uneven, as if fighting a battle inside his own mind. Ethan stood only a few inches away, separated from the massive German shepherd by a thin line of steel and fear. The handlers watched with white-knuckled tension, unsure whether to intervene or trust what they were witnessing. Ethan turned his head toward Karen. "I need to go inside." The hallway erupted. "What? No. Absolutely not. He'll tear you apart. Ethan, you don't understand. Thor is unstable." Ethan stayed calm, letting the storm of objections wash over him. Karen stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Ethan, listen to me. Thor attacks every person who enters his space. Every single one. I can't let you do this." "You saw what just happened," Ethan replied softly. "He didn't attack me. He chose not to." "That's not enough," a handler insisted. "We don't take chances with a dog this unpredictable." Ethan tilted his head slightly, listening to Thor's breathing, heavy but controlled. The dog wasn't snarling or pacing anymore. He was waiting. "Open the door," Ethan said. Karen shook her head, horrified. "Ethan, I can't be responsible for what happens in there." Ethan rested one hand over his heart. "You're not responsible. I am." The handlers exchanged desperate glances. Thor's tail flicked once behind the bars, not wagging but acknowledging the tension building around him. Karen tried again, her voice fragile. "What makes you think he won't attack?" Ethan turned his blind eyes toward Thor's cage. "Because pain recognizes pain. He knows I'm not here to threaten him." Thor let out a faint low sound, somewhere between a growl and a plea. Finally, after a long, trembling breath, Karen gave a reluctant nod to the senior handler. "Unlock the safety gate, but keep tranquilizers ready. If he lunges—" "He won't," Ethan interrupted. The heavy gate clanked open with a sharp metallic echo. The handlers readied themselves, forming a tense half-circle around the entrance. Ethan stepped forward, feeling the shift in the air as he crossed the threshold. Thor tensed immediately, muscles tightening like drawn wires. "Stop right there," a handler warned, pole raised. Ethan ignored them. He lifted his hand slowly, palm open, showing no fear. Thor growled, deep, warning, confused. Then Ethan spoke. "It's okay, boy. I'm not here to replace him. I just want to understand." Thor's growl broke. A breath, a tremble, a single step forward. Not aggression. Recognition. The air inside the kennel room felt heavier, charged with something ancient. Instinct, memory, grief. The handlers stood frozen at the entrance, tranquilizer poles raised but trembling. Karen watched with both dread and awe as Ethan slowly lowered himself to one knee, guided by the rhythm of Thor's breathing. Thor's body remained rigid, muscles coiled like springs under his thick black and tan coat. His eyes, intense, wild, confused, locked onto Ethan with unblinking focus. A deep growl rumbled in his chest, but it didn't carry the sharp edge of violence. It sounded torn. Ethan didn't flinch. "Easy, boy. I'm right here." Thor stepped closer, one heavy paw at a time. His nails clicked softly against the concrete, measured, deliberate steps, not the reckless charge they all expected. Ethan kept his hand extended, palm open, fingers relaxed. Karen whispered to the handler beside her, "Why isn't he attacking?" "No idea. He should have lunged by now." Thor's growl softened as he leaned in to sniff Ethan's outstretched hand. First the fingers, then the wrist, then the sleeve of Ethan's jacket. His breathing changed, faster, more urgent. He pressed his nose deeper, sniffing with desperate intensity. Ethan's brows furrowed. "He smells something." Thor suddenly jerked his head up, eyes widening. He moved closer until his snout hovered near Ethan's chest, inhaling sharply. Then a sound escaped him, a choked, broken whine that didn't belong to a dangerous dog, but to one who remembered something he wished he could forget. Karen's eyes widened. What's happening to him? Ethan touched the front of his jacket where Thor kept sniffing. My vest, he whispered. It belonged to someone in my unit. I kept it after the explosion. Thor let out another trembling whine, then nudged Ethan's chest gently, hesitant, emotional, recognizing something buried deep in the fabric. A scent from the battlefield, a scent of another soldier, a scent connected to trauma and loss. One handler whispered, voice cracking, "Oh my God, he thinks Ethan is connected to his old handler." Ethan felt Thor's breath warm against his skin, the trembling in the dog's body undeniable. Slowly, achingly slowly, Thor lowered his head and placed it against Ethan's shoulder. The room fell silent. No growling, no snarling, just a grieving dog leaning into a grieving man. Ethan's hand shook as he rested it gently on Thor's neck. "You're not alone anymore," he murmured. Thor closed his eyes. For the first time since losing his partner, he allowed himself to trust someone new. Thor's massive head rested against Ethan's shoulder, the trembling finally slowing, replaced by a deep, heavy breath of surrender, of trust. Ethan's hand remained on Thor's neck, steady and gentle. For a moment, the world outside that kennel didn't exist. No concrete walls, no bars, no warnings, just two wounded souls recognizing each other in silence. But the spell shattered the moment a sharp voice cut through the doorway. "What on earth is going on here?" Everyone turned. The facility director, Mr. Halverson, stern, tall, and infamous for his strict protocols, stormed into the room. His eyes widened in disbelief as he took in the sight. Thor, the most dangerous dog in the rehabilitation center, not attacking, but leaning, against a stranger, against a civilian. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice thick with alarm. "Why is the kennel open? Why is a blind man inside it?" Karen stepped forward quickly. "Sir, something happened. Thor reacted differently. He didn't show aggression. He's manipulating you," Halverson snapped. "This dog is unpredictable. He's unstable. We do not allow anyone near him, especially not someone vulnerable." Thor lifted his head slightly, a low, protective rumble forming in his chest. He positioned himself half in front of Ethan, body tense, guarding. Halverson's eyes narrowed. "This is exactly what I mean. Look at him, ready to attack." "No," Ethan said calmly. "He's protecting." "Protecting?" Halverson scoffed. "He has injured trained handlers. He nearly killed a staff member during evaluation. He is not adoptable." Ethan stood slowly, one hand still resting lightly on Thor's shoulder. He recognized a scent from my past. He didn't attack. He understood. "Please, give him a chance." Halverson's face hardened. "Absolutely not. Thor is a liability, a lawsuit waiting to happen. I can't allow you, or anyone else, to adopt him." Karen stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. "Sir, with respect, Thor hasn't behaved like this for anyone." Halverson raised a hand. "Enough. He stays here. End of discussion." Thor sensed the tension, and the hair along his back bristled. His tail stiffened, his paws planted firmly on the ground. A soft growl threatened to build again, not out of aggression, but fear. Fear of losing the one person he had connected with in a year. Halverson pointed to the handlers. "Remove Mr. Walker from the kennel. Now." As they approached, Thor stepped forward, blocking them with a deep, warning growl. Ethan touched his fur. "Easy, boy." But even he could feel it. Thor wasn't just resisting. He was refusing to lose someone again. The handlers hesitated at the director's order, fear flashing in their eyes as Thor planted himself firmly between Ethan and anyone who tried to approach. His stance was protective, unyielding, a wall of muscle and emotion, but Halverson's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Trank teams on standby. I want that dog contained." "No!" Ethan shouted, stepping forward with surprising force. Thor reacted instantly, pressing his body protectively against Ethan's legs, teeth bared at the advancing handlers. Halvorsen scowled. This is exactly why he is dangerous. Karen stepped in front of Ethan. Sir, please, don't escalate this. Thor is reacting to the threat you're creating. Halvorsen ignored her. Get Mr. Walker out of here. Two handlers approached cautiously. Thor's growl deepened, vibrating through the concrete floor. His chest heaved, his breathing frantic, his body trembling with the terror of being separated again. Ethan knelt beside him, whispering softly, It's okay, boy. I'm right here. Thor's eyes, wild, desperate, locked onto Ethan's blind but steady gaze. But the handlers advanced, and Thor snapped, not at Ethan, but at the poles aimed toward him. Metal clanged as he bit down, shaking violently. The room erupted as staff scrambled back. We can't control him, a handler shouted. Pull Mr. Walker out now, Halvorsen barked. Karen grabbed Ethan's arm. Please, Ethan, please. If you stay, they'll sedate him, or worse. Ethan hesitated, Thor trembling beneath his hand. Another handler reached in, and Thor lunged, teeth clashing against the pole inches from the man's wrist. Ethan's voice broke. I don't want to leave him like this. I know, Karen whispered, but if you don't, he'll see them as a threat to you. And he won't stop. Ethan slowly rose. Thor whimpered, a heartbreaking, choking sound, pressing himself into Ethan's legs as if begging him not to go. Ethan knelt once more, cupping Thor's face gently. I'll come back, Ethan murmured. I promise. Thor whined louder, nudging Ethan frantically, refusing to let go. Karen tugged softly. Ethan stepped away. The moment Ethan crossed the threshold, Thor's entire body changed. His ears pinned back. His breath hitched. His eyes went wild. Then the breakdown began. Thor hurled himself at the bars with terrifying power, snarling, barking, smashing his body against the cage so violently the steel rattled. The handlers shouted. Karen gasped. Halvorsen swore under his breath. Thor wasn't attacking. He was grieving in the only way he knew how. Desperate, violent, heartbroken, because Ethan was gone. The echoes of Thor's anguished fury still reverberated through the hallways when a shrill alarm suddenly blared overhead, cutting through every sound like a knife. Red emergency lights flashed against the concrete walls, bathing the corridor in frantic pulses of color. Karen spun around. What now? A handler shouted from down the hall. Smoke in Wing C. We've got a fire. Everyone evacuate immediately. Chaos erupted. Handlers bolted toward emergency stations. Fire doors slammed shut, and staff raced to guide animals out of harm's way. The smell of smoke drifted in, sharp, choking, unmistakable. Karen grabbed Ethan's arm, her voice urgent. We have to go. Now. But Ethan didn't move. Thor! He's in a fire zone, one handler yelled, coughing as smoke seeped into the corridor. The doors are locked. We can't reach him. At the mention of Thor's name, Ethan's heart plunged. He pictured the dog, alone, terrified, abandoned again. The thought twisted something deep inside him, something too familiar. Karen tried pulling Ethan again. Come on, we'll get him once the fire team arrives. Once they arrive? Ethan snapped. He doesn't have time. Another explosion rattled the building as fire burst through a ventilation duct. Flames licked up the metal frame, the heat pulsing outward. Move, Halvorsen barked, ushering staff toward the exit. Evacuate, now. But Ethan planted his cane firmly on the floor. I'm not leaving him. Karen's voice trembled. Ethan, you can't see. You'll get lost in the smoke. He shook his head. Thor will find me. Before Karen could protest, Ethan turned away from the exit and ran toward the thickening smoke. Staff lunged to stop him, but he slipped past with surprising speed, guided only by memory and instinct. Karen Zhao out. Ethan, stop! He didn't. Deeper in the building, beyond the fire doors, Thor was losing control. Smoke filled his kennel and he rammed the cage with panicked force, barking desperately. His claws scraped helplessly against the steel. No one was coming. Not again. Not this time. Ethan shouted into the darkness. Thor. Through the roaring fire and crackling debris, a distant bark rang out, frantic yet unmistakable. Ethan followed it, step by step, blind Cain tapping wildly against the ground. The smoke burned his lungs. Heat pressed against his skin. "Keep barking, boy," he yelled, voice breaking. "I'm coming." Thor barked again, stronger, louder, guiding him like a beacon in the storm. And though Ethan couldn't see a thing, he knew one truth with absolute certainty. Thor wasn't just a dangerous dog anymore. He was calling for him. The deeper Ethan moved into the burning wing, the thicker the smoke became. Hot air scorched his lungs and his eyes, blind though they were, stung with the intensity of the fire. His cane tapped wildly, searching for safe ground, but the flames roared too loud for thought. Then, bark. Thor's cry cut through the inferno like a lifeline. Ethan turned toward the sound, stumbling forward until his cane struck something, solid, a wall. He slid his hand across it, feeling the vibrations of Thor slamming against his kennel on the other side. The metal rattled with each desperate hit. "I'm here, boy," Ethan shouted over the roar. "I'm right here." Thor barked again, claws scraping frantically, the sound growing more frantic. He understood Ethan was close enough that giving up wasn't an option. Ethan pushed along the wall until his hand found the heated edge of the kennel gate. The handle was blistering hot. The flames had weakened the lock, but it still held strong. "Hold on, Thor," Ethan whispered, coughing violently. "I've got you." Summoning every ounce of strength left in him, Ethan wrapped his jacket around his hand and yanked the handle. It didn't budge. Smoke filled his chest. He tried again, harder. Nothing. Thor barked wildly, smashing his body against the door from the inside. "Again!" Ethan rasped. "Do it again!" Thor hurled himself forward. Ethan pulled with everything he had. The weakened lock finally snapped. The kennel door burst open, and Thor exploded out of the smoke like a missile, knocking Ethan backward. But it wasn't an attack. Thor circled him frantically, nudging his chest, whining loudly, licking his face as if confirming he was real. "You found me." Ethan coughed, gripping Thor's fur. "Good boy, good boy." A beam collapsed nearby with a violent crash. Thor barked once, sharply, then did something extraordinary. He pressed his body against Ethan's side and guided him away from the flames. The once feared, once broken police dog had become Ethan's eyes. Step by step, Thor steered him through the burning hallway, dodging falling debris with uncanny precision. Each time Ethan faltered, Thor braced him with his own weight. They turned a corner just as flames consumed the ceiling behind them. Another crash. Another explosion of sparks. "Keep going, boy," Ethan gasped. "I'm right with you." Thor barked, urging him forward. Finally, fresh air hit Ethan's face. Thor dragged him out of the burning wing and into the arms of shocked firefighters. The dangerous dog had just saved the man who refused to give up on him. The moment Thor pulled Ethan into the open air, firefighters surged toward them, shouting orders over the crackling roar of the burning wing. Smoke billowed into the sky in thick black waves. Sirens wailed. Staff scrambled. But Thor ignored everything. Every voice, every hand, every command, except Ethan. Ethan collapsed to his knees, coughing hard as clean air finally reached his lungs. Thor immediately pressed his body against him. Tail lowered, ears pinned back in fear and desperation. His chest heaved with exhaustion, but his eyes never left Ethan's face. A paramedic rushed forward. "We need to get him on oxygen," Thor growled, stepping protectively in front of Ethan. "It's okay," Ethan whispered, reaching out to touch Thor's head. "He's just trying to help." The paramedic froze, wide-eyed. "Sir, This is the same dog you said was too dangerous to handle? Ethan managed a weak smile. He saved my life. Thor lowered his head, nudging Ethan's arm as if to say, "Don't ever scare me like that again." Firefighters surrounded them, pulling hoses and shouting updates. A loud crash erupted as part of the roof collapsed. The staff flinched. Thor didn't. He stayed locked against Ethan, trembling but steadfast. Karen arrived next, tears streaking her smoky face. "Ethan, you're alive. Thank God." She knelt beside him, touching his shoulder. "I thought we lost you." Thor growled again, protective instinct flaring. "It's okay, boy," Ethan soothed. "She's a friend." Thor reluctantly relaxed, but only by a fraction. Karen put a hand over her heart. "I've never seen him like this. Not with anyone. Not even near anyone." Ethan stroked Thor's fur, feeling the dog's rapid heartbeat. "He didn't save me because he's trained to. He saved me because he didn't want to lose another person." A paramedic approached with an oxygen mask. This time, Thor didn't growl, only hovered anxiously as they helped Ethan breathe. The dog paced in a tight circle, whining softly, tail brushing the ground in panicked sweeps. Every few seconds he pressed his nose against Ethan's shoulder to reassure himself the man was still there. "Easy, boy," Ethan whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." But Thor wasn't reassured. His body shivered with exhaustion and smoke exposure. His legs wobbled, yet he refused to lie down, refused to blink, refused to be separated, even by inches. Karen whispered, overwhelmed. "He's chosen you, Ethan. Completely." Thor finally leaned against Ethan again, exhausted, trembling, but unyielding. And the truth became clear to everyone watching. This was no longer a dangerous dog. This was a guardian who had found his person. Thor's trembling body remained pressed against Ethan as firefighters battled the flames devouring the rehabilitation wing. The world around them was chaos. Sirens shouted commands, collapsing beams, but Thor focused only on Ethan, refusing to let anyone pull him away. Director Halverson pushed through the crowd, his face red from smoke and fury. "What were you thinking?" he snapped. "You could have died in there, both of you. And Thor." He stopped mid-sentence. Thor turned his head and locked eyes with Halverson. Not with aggression, not with defiance, but with a raw, exhausted plea. "Don't take him away from me." Halverson froze. Karen stepped between them, her voice soft but trembling. "Sir." Thor saved Ethan's life. He guided him through the fire. He protected him more than any service dog could have. Halverson shook his head, struggling to reconcile what he saw with what he believed. "No. Thor is unstable. He doesn't bond. He doesn't trust. He's a danger." Ethan lifted the oxygen mask slightly, his voice hoarse but steady. "You're wrong. He's not dangerous. He's grieving, and he found someone who understands him." Thor nudged Ethan gently, reinforcing every word. A handler approached, rubbing his bruised arm. "Sir, we couldn't get near him when Ethan was inside the fire zone. Thor wasn't attacking for the sake of it. He was protecting." Another added, "I've never seen a dog move like that. He navigated around falling debris. He knew exactly where to place his body to shield Ethan." Karen nodded. "Sir, this isn't an accident. This is a bond." Halverson looked at them one by one. Handlers, staff, firefighters, each with the same stunned expression. Then he watched Thor's trembling legs finally give out as the dog sank beside Ethan, resting his head on the man's lap as though afraid the world might take him away again. Ethan stroked Thor's ears. "He needs a home, not a cage." Halverson's jaw tightened. "Ethan, I can't. Thor has a record. If anything goes wrong, the liability—" Thor lifted his head, letting out a soft, broken sound. A sound Halverson had never heard from him. A sound of pleading. Halverson's breath faltered. Karen spoke gently. "Sir, Please, let this dog live again." Silence fell. Finally, Halvorson exhaled, defeated by the undeniable truth before him. "Fine," he whispered. "You win. Thor stays with you." Ethan's shoulders sagged with relief. Thor lifted himself just enough to press his forehead against Ethan's chest. A broken warrior had finally been set free. The sun had barely risen when Ethan stepped out of the rehabilitation center the next morning, but the world felt entirely different. The fire had been extinguished, the damaged wing sealed off, and cleanup crews moved around charred debris with heavy machinery. Yet, despite the destruction, something beautiful had emerged from the ashes. Thor walked beside him. No leash, no commands, just trust. Each step he took was slow, cautious, his body still weakened from smoke exposure, but he refused to leave Ethan's side. Every few steps, Thor nudged Ethan's hand with his nose, as if reminding himself this wasn't a dream. Ethan smiled softly each time, letting his fingers trail through the dog's fur. Karen jogged up behind them, paperwork in hand. "Ethan, wait, your adoption forms." Ethan chuckled. "Thought I already signed." "Half of them," she said breathlessly. "The rest are new, because apparently Thor's file has to be rewritten. Completely." She handed him a folder. Halvorson said, and I quote, "This dog is no longer a danger. He's a hero." Thor's ears perked up at her voice, and he gave her a gentle nudge with his nose. Karen's eyes softened. "You're going to do so well with him, Ethan." Ethan nodded. "No. He's going to do well with us. We're in this together." They reached the parking lot just as a gentle breeze rustled the trees. Thor inhaled deeply, savoring the fresh air. The world was larger than the steel bars he had known for so long, and he looked around with a mix of wonder and caution, as if rediscovering life itself. Weeks passed, and a new rhythm formed. Ethan taught Thor how to be a service dog not through commands, but through connection. Some training sessions happened outside in the park, where Ethan walked with his cane in one hand and Thor's harness in the other. The dog learned to guide him around obstacles, gently pressing his shoulder against Ethan's leg to steer him away from danger. The transformation was astonishing. The once feared, unadoptable K9 who couldn't be approached by staff now sat patiently beside children at the park. Mothers watched cautiously at first, but Thor's calm, gentle presence soon eased every worry. Ethan would chuckle. "He just needs purpose, same as any of us." At night, Thor would rest beside Ethan's bed, refusing to sleep until he heard Ethan's steady breathing. Sometimes in the quiet, Ethan reached down and placed his hand on Thor's head, and Thor would sigh, a deep, contented exhale, knowing he wasn't alone anymore. One afternoon, Karen visited. Thor bounded toward her, tail wagging, his once rigid stance replaced by warmth. "I can't believe this is the same dog," she said, astonished. "He looks happy." "He is," Ethan said, "because he's working again. He's protecting again. He has someone to watch over." Karen glanced at Ethan. "And you?" Ethan paused. "I have someone to help me move forward." Thor, hearing his name in their conversation, trotted over and pressed his forehead gently against Ethan's knee, a gesture that had become his silent promise. Months later, something extraordinary happened. Ethan and Thor were invited to a ceremony at the police department. Officers lined up in honor as Thor and Ethan approached the podium. The chief spoke of bravery, resilience, and the bond between man and dog. "Thor may have been retired," the chief said, "but heroes never truly retire. This dog saved a life once again, this time not through training, but through love." Thor sat tall beside Ethan, ears alert, posture proud. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't seen as a threat, a burden, or a broken weapon. He was seen as a warrior, a survivor, a guardian. Ethan placed a hand on Thor's back. "Thank you," he whispered, "for finding me when I needed you most." Thor closed his eyes, leaning into him. And in that moment, surrounded by applause, flashing lights, and a crowd moved to tears, Ethan realized something profound. He hadn't rescued Thor. Thor had rescued him. Together, they weren't broken pieces. They were a new beginning.